Tank destroyers are by far the most diverse class of vehicles in World of Tanks Blitz. You have a vehicle like a Grille 15, which has literally no armor, and has to be played in the back of the map, and then you move over to a vehicle like the 268 version 4, which has the most armor in tier 10, but then you go back over to a vehicle like the 183, which has a huge alpha, but trades everything else for that alpha damage, which means, again, you're going to be sitting further back, but it can frontline if you know how to use it properly. And then we go to, like, a Foch, which I actually think might be the hardest tank to properly master in World of Tanks Blitz. There are so many different TDs, each one plays differently. Today we are focusing on the lightly armored passive-style tank destroyers. Vehicles that can fit into this role. Well, we have the 4005. We have the FE2 and 5B 183. The Hori can do this role if you want it to. The Grille 15, and basically any lightly armored vehicle, even the 268 can do it as well. But I think the Grille is really the best vehicle to show as an explanation. First of all, it is still the most popular tank destroyer, apart from the 183 in tier 10, which is surprising. I always do find it crazy that people still go for the Grille. I'm not sure what the major driving factor of this vehicle is. Maybe it's that it's got this huge gun and people think it looks really cool, or maybe it's the fact that it's super accurate with high DPM and, you know, good alpha damage, but I don't know. The Grille has always been one of those peculiar tanks to me. I think it's a very fun vehicle to play, but it's also probably one of the hardest and most team-dependent tanks to play in the game. So we're going to be focusing on not only positioning, but situational awareness and how to take advantage of your opponents to get out a win. A lot of people think, oh, a tank destroyer is easy to play. I'm going to drive a Grille. I got to camp as far back as possible. I don't need to worry about what goes on. All I need to do is shoot people when they make misplays, which, sure, to a certain extent on certain maps might be true. But let me show you all an example of why that might not be the case. In front of you, you're going to see a game of me driving the Grille on Castilla, which I was recording live the other week. And I didn't really make a misplay in this game. I was in my Grille on the ridgeline, tried shooting a 57 heavy, and then my game was over. And it shows you just how fragile these vehicles are and why you need to basically be prepared for your butt to get touched when you're driving them. We have the T-57 Heavy detected in the back, and we are going to wait for him to over-angle his tank, and there you go. You got a nice shell out. But you'll notice we just got lit up. In fact, we're dead. That right there is a great example of just how quickly you can die in a Grille. Now that game there, I honestly can't say there's much you can learn from it. I went onto the ridgeline, I had a free shot, and I thought we could back off of it. There really wasn't much I could have thought would go wrong until it did. But that is the downside of lightly armored tanks in general, is you gotta be really careful. Any tank that has high alpha, I mean, we died mainly because of the fact the enemy 183 was able to nuke us. That tank literally brought us down about all of our health. But as I said, you gotta be careful, you gotta be paying attention to everything that goes on, because if you're not, games like that can happen. So, a little disappointing, but it's not that big of a deal. Usually you'll recoup as long as you know how to play it properly. So, what are we going to do here? Well, we are going to make our way into this bush right here. This is a fairly aggressive position for, you know, a tank destroyer like this, but it's a pretty good spot because anybody that over-aggresses, we can get shells on. And anybody that tries crossing in the open, if they do over here, we can also get shells into. So it's just a very good position in general to bleed out enemies if they make misplays or over-pokes, which is always something that you're looking for when driving a Grille. So we can see the enemy BZ-75. We can see quite a bit, actually. We can see the YAG, but there's really not much to do right now. We do have that WZ in the open, but again, not much to really do to that tank. Vickers did cross, however not able to hit him, and we did actually get spotted by the Vickers as well, which is rather disappointing. Well, what we do have is the Jagdpanzer. That right now is the target I'm going to aim in on, so we're going to activate our reticle calibration, and there you go. We got a shell out. Unfortunately, we basically evenly traded as the 121 was able to hit us back the same, so kind of back and forth, but that's what's nice about the Grille, is it's super duper accurate. Honestly, I don't really mind if that 121 wants to go out of his way to focus me, because of the fact that we aren't the big threat on what's currently going on right now. That is the rest of the team. So if we can distract, that's actually really, really good. 121 shoots us again. Could not care, to be honest. We're going to aim it on that enemy Vickers. There you go. Nice 580 shell into his tank. And that helps out our bat chat a lot, because now our bat chat is doing a lot better there. You can see how tricky it can be, though, to drive a tank like the Grille, because we're constantly paying attention. We're constantly scoping this surrounding situation to see what we can do. BZ-75's all the way in the back. We're going to back up ourselves and see if we can possibly get a shell out. Well, there you go. E5 over pokes. We get a shell into him. Unfortunately, the rest of our team really isn't taking advantage of this. Well, the boss shot Dion's going to push in. 268's kind of scraping us, which is a little annoying, but it's not too big of a deal. We're going to back up here, and I don't think we're going to be able to... Oh, well, we got the BZ. And there you go. 560 damage shot. You'll notice I activated my reticle calibration for that because I wanted to guarantee the penetration on his tank. But we got it out, and we're doing pretty good. But notice how, like, we're not playing passive at all in this game. We're actually playing pretty aggressive. Sometimes you have to do that in a vehicle like the Grille to actually get out some consistent shots. You know, if you're not playing it properly, you will definitely notice very, very quickly. Now that WZ is, honestly, both WZs are really, really scary, but I'm going to push this enemy 113. I don't even care if the 121 shoots me, because we cleared by far the most dangerous tank on the enemy team, which is that 113 GFT. That tank is really scary and a big threat to deal with. We can see that our E6 over here is going to be rushed by the T100, and we already know what's going to happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get an 800 damage high explosive into his tank. So before we die, we do a pretty big impact. As we can see, this is a pretty solid battle in terms of damage, and we even managed to pick up 2 kills, finishing top on the team. At the end of the day, when you have bad teammates, especially in a vehicle like the Grille, as I said before, it's going to be very hard to win. And this is where, in lightly armored tank destroyers, you're just going to have to focus on not only getting out damage, but living as long as possible. So what we're going to do is let's actually go back through this replay, talk about what was going through my mind as the game progressed, and why I specifically targeted certain players, why I did this and that, because these are always things that you always want to pick up on. You always want to have them as second nature. While you're playing the game, your brain is automatically doing these things, which obviously limits the amount of time you need to spend, you know, thinking, oh, should I do that? Should I do this? Where should I go? So, as I did say, the enemy team only had 2 heavies. They had 3 mediums, 2 tank destroyers. So it was pretty already common sense that the enemy team was probably going to be making their way over towards base A. So let's skip it ahead a little bit. Until around right now. Now, the Vickers Light ended up spotting me. The viewport on his vehicle was just tall enough to see over the ridge, which is what ended up detecting us. Obviously, the Jagdpanzer, super easy target. So we're going to shoot the Jag once. At this point, we have a couple options in front of us. And the options are, we can either probably go around, maybe, you know, behind this building, and make our way over to the side of the Jag, possibly bleeding him out and distracting, which might also cause the 121 to push us. The problem is, if we do that, we are isolated, and we're putting ourselves in a very prone position to just kind of get deleted. So there's really no point in trying to flank. I'm in a tank destroyer. I'm not in a medium. I'm not in a light. I don't have a turret. There is no point to do that. So what we need to do is stay where our team is. I saw the 200 LT, and I was very tempted to shoot him, but obviously at that angle it's not worth it. But now with the Vickers Light and 200 spotted wide, I had a couple options. It was either I could look at the Jag, possibly try to shoot him, stare at the 121. I could go low with the rest of the team and try and shoot the E5, the 113. However, the 113 GFT and E5 are going to absolutely nuke that STB. There's nothing I can do about that. And 2 of those tanks have massive HE potential, which is very scary for a vehicle like the Grille. So it's much smarter to deal with the tanks that are possibly going to outspot you, outmaneuver you, get behind you later in the game, which are the lights. So the 121 shoots me, not that big of a deal. We are aiming in on this Vickers, so we're going to pre-aim the shot. There you go. 580 damage. Just like that, we have finally broken 1,000. That saves our light tank quite a bit of time, because now our light tank's able to leave, and the enemy Vickers is not really able to push, which is obviously really, really important. But, again, there goes the STB, which was very, very expected. We have the Progetto. I don't even know where the heck our Progetto was the entire game, but E5 over pokes. I don't mind trading health in a tank, you know. I have Spall Liner on this vehicle, so the E5's average damage is actually the same as it would be normally. But at this point, I'm really worried about that BZ. I'm pretty confident the BZ is going to end up poking, so you can see I have my reticle calibration, and I just pre-aimed him. The BZ wasn't running the derp gun anyway, so it wasn't as big of a problem, but still definitely something that you should always keep in mind. So we're at 2,000 damage, and as of this point, the game still looked winnable, so I wasn't really worried about losing. I wasn't worried about farming damage. The major threat is the box, the WZ-113 GFT, and that's why, even though I probably could have stayed a little bit behind, I know immediately that the 2100 LT and the enemy Vickers Light are going to be flanking. And there's really not much I can do about that, especially with the Jagdpanzer on the other side, but what I can do is aim it on the WZ and get him cleared. And even though I bleed a bit of health for it, just clearing that 113 could be the difference between winning and losing a game. The only problem is that our E6 gets absolutely pushed, and as well, I get pushed. But at least I'm able to get one more shell out. But if you take a look at what we actually did in this game, it's about the most we could have. It's rather unfortunate that we did end up losing this because it could have been a pretty easy win. If this 268 and 5A had played a little bit more aggressive, and the E6, instead of trying to hold that, had pushed with the rest of us on the 121, probably could have been a win, because we would have been able to kill the 121, and then I could have, skedaddled away, hopefully, maybe backed into a corner. They could have turned around and then held them. The problem was, the E6 tried holding, which you can't do in an E6. You have to use the mobility on it. That E6 should have been the first one dealing with all the tanks over here. So that's kind of what happened. It's not the end of the world. We still did pretty good, but it shows you where you have to really think about positioning your tank. You can't stay camping all game. If I had stayed back on that ridge the entire battle, I wouldn't have done anything, and the team would have just died around me, and it would have been a loss. Even worse, I wouldn't have done any damage. Just because you're in a tank destroyer, even one that has a little armor, you still want to reposition. If you're not shooting people, if you are not making an impact in the game for more than probably 20 seconds, you're not doing your job. You need to be getting shells out in tank destroyers. Alright, well this is actually another good example of a map where driving a tank destroyer might be a little bit challenging because we're on Port Bay. And Port Bay is easily one of the worst maps to drive any tank destroyer on because of the way it's designed. Now what we're going to do early game is we're going to make our way over to the medium crossing. We don't know where the enemy team's going to go, but if they do send a vehicle across here, the Sheridan on our team will spot it, and we will hopefully get a bleed out. However, as we can see, it appears that nobody has actually crossed. So, yep, indeed-aler, the enemy has gone more towards town. It's kind of hard to tell. They're kind of making their way over here too, but it's back and forth. I don't really know what their team's doing, to be honest. We're going to chill right here, and we're going to see if the enemy Kron or anybody tries to poke. So we got the Kron in the back. We got the E4 in the back as well. If that Kron pokes it again, or the E100. There you go. 680 damage shell, and we chill right here where we are just slow enough down that the E100 cannot see us. It's a great example of how you can obviously hide your weak spots, and this is kind of what you want to do in TDs. You're never going to be in the front line, obviously, in a Grille, but what you can be is kind of in the mid line, where you can get some good bleeds out, you can distract. Look at that, easy shot into the enemy E4. We've already done 1800 damage, all farming off of our one Rhino here, and that's pretty good. And then we're going to reload in just a moment, and we're going to get another shell out, so let's aim it on the enemy WZ. There you go. We still have our reticle Cali going, which means we still have very, very effective DPM, obviously. So we're just going to, well, we're going to see what we can do. I'm going to overpoke this, and we're going to aim it on the E4, and, well, unfortunately our shell misses, but that's fine, because we leave. That's what you do in this tank. Now, sure, I could support my E4, but I don't really see a reason to do that, especially we have the YAG over here, which is a 3, 545. It is a low roll, but it's not that big of a deal. Right now, I would much rather focus on leaving that flank. Those players don't really have too much health left, and I just don't see much of a reason to actually holding that when we can bleed out this Jagdpanzer and the enemy AMX M4, which are going to be easier targets to deal with. Our Sheridan's still holding that corner anyway, so I just don't see much of a problem. So we have the enemy AMX over here, and we are going to aim it on the AMX, and bonk, there you go, 549, and leaves us with the YAG, because the AMX is obviously dead. So what we're going to do is climb up the hill. So you'll notice how I always position my tank in a way that I am able to get out damage, but I'm not bleeding my health. We, in fact, didn't bleed any health this game, but we weren't passive. We weren't camping all the way back in spawn. We weren't in a position where we couldn't deal damage. We were just passive to the point where our teammate was always taking the shots for us, but we were supporting them, we were doing our job, and connecting our shots. And that's what you do in a Grille. This is what you do in a tank destroyer in general. The moment that I saw that my Rhino was dead. And we can go again. It's good to usually look at your replays. If you ever make a big mistake, if you ever die or something like that, it's always good advice to look at the replay, to see what you've done wrong, to see what you've done right. So the reason I'm here early game is because my Sheridan's crossing. Mediums love to cross here. And the Grille's fast. It goes upwards of 50 kilometers per hour. So because of that, you stare at this crossing here, and you can shoot mediums when they cross. That is a huge benefit. That can literally be the difference between winning and losing a game. Having a medium tank in this corner, having a heavy in this, or not a heavy, but a medium or a light in this corner, especially like once the game has developed and the entire team goes towards base C, you can instantly win because of that. So being able to get a shot in the crossing can absolutely change the outcome of a battle. But as we can see, obviously the Rhino's poking. I'm sitting still, so my camo net's activated. So I wasn't worried at all about this Kron or anybody spotting me until we fired at the U-100. And this little rock here that we can see is actually perfectly hiding me from the C-100. So if we actually go over to his tank here, this is his point of view on us. He's actually a little lower as well. So yeah, we're basically hidden behind that rock. I was tempted to back up, but you can see there's a little crack there. So I figured, you know what, nah, it's not worth it to back up in between that crack. I'm just going to drive down low, and there's no way anything's going to happen to us. So obviously we're farming off of the Rhino. But you'll notice, the moment that the Rhino starts to die, he's got 6 health, and the 113 finishes him off. The moment that Rhino dies, I'm like, okay, I got enough time because the Kron's pretty slow, possibly to get one shell out on the E4. We aim it on his lower plate, goes a little high, no problem. Always use whatever the mobility of your tank is in mind. So like the Grille and the 4005 are fairly fast. 4005 gets speed boost. So in this situation, I'm leaving before that Kron can roll around the corner, because even if the E4 is here, it's still very possible that Kron will ignore the E4 and try to clip me. The Grille is very prone to getting a cheat, and even though I do have Spall Liner, it still hurts. It damages a lot of modules. This tank is very easy to get lit on fire, damaged ammo rack, stuff like that. It's also easy to track, and you know, a 1200 damage clip from a vehicle like a Kron can be a difference of 1760 health down to, you know, like a 300-400. So you got to be really careful there. So I reposition, I make my way behind the enemy, and I look for easy, clear shots. I'm doing a lot more here for my team, getting a lot more damage out than I am all the way over on the single E4. That really just isn't worth my time. Always go for damage in TDs. If you need to support your teammates, do so. But obviously, when this is a win, I'm going to go for damage. I'm going to see how much I can get out. That's exactly what we did here. So not a bad results at all. Very, very solid game. The Grille is just a fantastic tank in general. Yes, it has a lot of weaknesses. It has a lot of downsides. And sometimes those downsides make it incredibly unenjoyable to drive, especially with the way the matchmaker is currently. But if you know what you're doing, you can definitely get some great results out. The Grille 15 is definitely one of the most challenging tanks to drive properly in the game. Even some of the skilled players I'm friends with really don't like this vehicle because of how situational it is. I like it because it's got a really snappy gun, and the fact that it's quite mobile, which allows you to reposition, dome somebody with its ridiculously good accuracy, and reposition again. But obviously that comes with skill, experience, and practice. So, hopefully you enjoyed today's video. If you'd like to see more like it, please consider smashing that subscribe button down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.